In the 1950s, George Reeves embodied the Man of Steel in Superman's first television adaptation, from its gritty black and white beginnings to the kid-friendly color years. To this day, an entire generation reveres George as their Superman, while for others, the show remains an overlooked, underrated chapter in the character's history. On this podcast, we bring everyone together as we break down each episode of Adventures of Superman, examining it within the context of the series itself, as well as the larger Superman mythology. Welcome to another exciting episode in the Adventures of Superman. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss Season 6, Episode 1, The Last Night, is returning guest, Rich Roney. Welcome back for the start of the final season.
Yep, and thanks for having me. It's been a while, and I had to get away from it for a little bit, so I'm happy to be back, and I'm also happy Season 5's in our rearview mirror.
Yes, very much so. Just like I think the fandom generally considers Season 5 to be the low point of the show, by the same token, I think the conventional wisdom is that Season 6 represented a bit of a return to form for the show. I welcome your thoughts on that. This is also something that we'll unpack and we'll continue to hit on as the season unfolds. I'll say from my perspective, overall, I agree with that. I wouldn't say Season 6 is like a return to glory for the show. I think its best days are still behind it, but thankfully that downward trajectory does not continue. And I do feel like we see an upswing here in Season 6 from that low point of Season 5. And there are a couple of episodes, and you'll be joining me for them, but Divide and Conquer and the Mysterious Cube.
Those are two of my favorites.
You know, and they introduce new powers for Superman, which mileage will vary and we'll discuss, but they're interesting. I think there are a few interesting episodes and high points in this season that we really didn't necessarily see before. So yeah, I mean, I'm again thankful to be out of Season 5 territory, and I think we'll be in a better spot this season.
Cool.
You know, we talked at the beginning of Season 5 about how Jackson Gillis had departed the writing staff. We had a new writer in Season 5, Wilton Schiller. Here in Season 6, notably, Whitney Ellsworth takes a much more prominent role on the writing side. He's credited as co-writing 9 out of the 13 episodes. So strong Whitney Ellsworth influence here on the season. Not that he didn't have influence before, but as far as actually writing or co-writing episodes.
Interesting.
There's a lot of that. Yeah.
I'll look for that because I know you've given me the privilege. I've got this one, The Last Night, Divide and Conquer, The Magic Cube. And then I think you're inviting me back towards the very, very end. You're giving me a gift because, well, I remember as a child watching some of these things and just loving it.
Right on. And of course, we recognize, and I'm sure this will come up again, especially when we get to the end, this was not meant to be the final season. Right. And in fact, there were plans to do 26 more episodes to essentially replace Season 1, the Season 1 batch of episodes in the syndication package.
Oh, I never knew that.
Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
I feel like I've often heard it more in the context of the Season 1 episodes were so violent, but I think it seems to have more to do with the quality of the actual negatives, the actual film, and that it was degrading. And I think that was an issue, maybe coupled with wanting to have more kid-friendly fare. I don't know. But that was the idea, that they were going to do 26 more episodes to replace Season 1
and
in the
have
overall
100
package.
100 for syndication.
Yeah.
Now, I've said this many times, I'll make it fast. As a child, Anthony, this was shown on WGN Channel 9 outside Chicago, and I saw much more of the color episodes. They downplayed some of the first season stuff.
That station manager was looking out for you.
I think that kind of was the policy.
Yeah. So I want to quote from this Flights of Fantasy book by Michael Haid, because he has a description of the condition of George Reeves in Season 6. And I just want to read from the book here, and then I welcome your thoughts. Because I think this is one of those things when we talk about the show and Reeves, I think this is kind of the narrative that you hear. I'm going to preface this by saying I don't necessarily agree with this, but this is what's written in Michael Haid's book. This season, speaking about Season 6, although slightly slimmer, Reeves looks and sounds tired, old, discouraged, bored. He didn't bother trying to hide his age. Thinning, slicked black hair added years to his face, as did new, larger eyeglass frames that now held genuine lenses. The recent tour still chafed, and his mood carried over to his performances. There's little of the old spark, particularly in his Clark Kent scenes. At times, when he speaks quietly and with little inflection, one suspects he was nursing a hangover. By some accounts, he wasn't waiting until afternoon to open the bar in his dressing room.
Interesting.
Again, this might be something that we unpack as we make our way further through the episodes, but I having watched all of them and even having recorded some of them, because we do record a little bit out of order, maybe my love for George is blinding me, or it's because I'm watching a lot together. It's blurring together. I don't know, but for whatever it's worth, and I'm not, I'm not to dispute this, but it's like, for whatever it's worth, I haven't had that view of George. I felt like, yes, I mean, physically, when you compare the way he looks in season 6, the way he looked, at the beginning of the show, of course, there's a decline in the physicality. But as far as that warmth, that warmth and charm that we've come to associate with his version of the character, I've continued to see it. So as I read that passage here, I wanted to include it because, again, I do feel like that's kind of generally, I think, the view that a lot of people have, but I don't know that I've necessarily seen it. I welcome any thoughts that you might have.
Okay. Thank you for saying that. So as we partner and review and discuss the season 6, I'm going to look for that. I'm going to look for his portrayals and how he carries himself. I'm going to look to see, does he look tired or jaded? Because he can turn on the charm. I mean, there are some of these episodes I'm going to watch, like it's coming to me from years and years and years ago, but the Divide and Conquer, when he's talking to his other half, he's charming. Is Mrs. Superman in this episode?
In this season, yeah.
Okay, he was pretty charming in that one too.
Yeah, exactly. So again, I wanted to acknowledge that, but also to share that that's not really been my view. Finally, one other big picture thing. This is terribly superficial, but I mean, Lois's hair, Noah O'Neill's hair, it's just orange at this point.
Okay.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
It's just striking to me. All right.
Okay. Well, see, when I was a child watching it in black and white, I really didn't have that problem.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. So in the last night, medieval LARPers target Jimmy and Lois to retrieve a cufflink. Are you familiar with LARPing? Live action role playing?
Oh, no.
Yes, so that's basically what these guys are doing. I don't think that term existed then, but that's basically what these guys are doing, dressing up as knights and pretending that they're these medieval knights.
I never knew that.
Yeah. So this aired on February 3rd, 1958, written by David Chandler, directed by our old pal Tommy Carr, back to kick off the final season.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, man, and we haven't seen Hadley in years.
Yes, yeah. It's a deep cut for the audience, but yes, going all the way back to season 1. You're referring to the character played by Tommy Carr's brother, Stephen Carr, in the Mind Machine episode.
Who later on was the voice coach, I think.
Right, who Clark punched out on the plane.
Clocked.
Yeah, that made
and then left him in a plane that's running out of fuel.
Yes. All right, so our guest cast, the knights in this episode, are played by Marshall Bradford, Jason Johnson, Paul Power, and Pierre Watkin. Anytime he pops up on the show, we have to reference the fact that he played Perry White in the Superman serials.
And in a bizarre fashion, he might have played Perry White had George Reeves not died. He was in consideration, I think, too, because John Hamilton died. Yeah,
because John Hamilton died. I think the idea was that he was going to come in as Perry White's brother, as opposed to outright take over the role of Perry White. But either way, I think, the idea was to have him behind the desk.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean...
remembering him, I could see him pulling it off. It might have been better had he been Perry's brother.
Yeah.
I wonder if he would have been the curmudgeon. You do the voice so well. What are you doing? What's going on with the school system today?
I know, exactly. My love of the TV series Smallville is well documented, and there's one rewatch podcast that's always at the top of my queue. Zach Moore's Always Hold On to Smallville, which continues with more great Smallville and Superman talk now that their series rewatch has concluded. Listen wherever you get podcasts. If you have children and are looking for a family-friendly store, look no further than Aw Yeah Comics. Visit one of their 3 locations, Harrison, New York, Muncie, Indiana, or Skokie, Illinois, and check out awyeahcomics.com for more. Their name says exactly how they feel about it. Aw yeah. Step into the refraction with Drunken Avenger #1, The Volunteer, an indie comic by Rick Reason that turns the tropes upside down. 4 men died in 9 seconds. John Stevens survived, but survival has a price. Follow @Drunken Avenger on social media for project updates and previews. All right. Okay. Any overall thoughts on this one before we segue into our play-by-play?
I can strongly remember watching this as a child, and I enjoyed this episode. So some of the harshness of my grading, I'm going to give you a very candid assessment, but there are some things about this I found enjoyable, very pleasant.
Yeah, this was, I would say overall a solid one, a decent start to the season. All right, we'll get into it here. Jimmy and Lois cover a medieval exhibit at the museum. When Jimmy drops his flashbulb, he finds and picks up a golden cufflink. After closing, a suit of armor display comes to life, smashes through a case housing a jewel, and then returns to position. Anything about this opening that you want to talk about?
No, nothing to add.
Superman arrives at the museum as Lois and Jimmy are being interrogated by Bill and the security guard. The jewel from the case was found on Jimmy, but Superman quickly smashes it to powder, revealing it to be a fake. The real jewel is discovered under its cushion in the case, and Jimmy notices that the knight from earlier, or the suit of armor, is gone. So interesting setup here, right, where clues seem to point to our young cub reporter, but then it turns out the jewel wasn't even stolen at all. It was all a diversion. I guess I liked, what stood out to me and what I liked was Superman intervening to speak up for his friends. At this point in the show, it's like you would expect maybe a bit more benefit of the doubt or courtesy from Bill.
Yeah.
But it's like, in his defense, he has to follow the facts and the evidence as they appear. Right. So if the jewel was found on Jimmy, I don't know. I still would expect a bit more professional courtesy, given their extensive history together. But at least I like that Superman was able to intervene. At a castle, Sir Arthur reconvenes with the other 3 members of the Society for the Preservation of Knighthood and Dragons and directs them to retrieve the cufflink. And they remark about the suit of armor that he's procured. So it becomes clear, that's what was taken from the museum. As I was watching this episode, certainly from this scene and then later, I recalled the Anti-Superstition Society from...
I have that note. This reminded me of the Lucky Cat.
And just like I said about those guys in that episode, these guys need to get laid.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, no.
I'm all for hobbies, don't get me wrong, but it's like, I feel like these guys...
Yeah, this reminded me of the Lucky Cat. This reminded me of that, though, in this one. And once again, there's a lot of play with dungeons and basements in both of the meeting places.
Yeah. As Lois and Jimmy depart the planet, they discuss how Jim is staying at Clark's while his mother is away. We're almost at the end of the show. We're in season 6. The kid still can't stay on his own. I understand, right? We need Rich's mouth is agape as he stared at me. I understand we need Sir Henry to later search Clark's apartment because they think Jimmy left the cufflink there.
Now, interestingly, Clark has a new apartment.
Clark has a new apartment in basically every episode that we see it in the color era. It's almost never the same.
Oh, really?
I haven't been keeping a log of it, but it's almost always different.
See, my memory of the apartment is very vividly Panic in the Sky.
Yes.
Right? And he had this big, expansive room with the lounge chair and then a tiny dining room table. But this is an entirely different apartment.
Yes. I've just resigned myself to the fact that he just moves around a lot.
Oh, you got maybe the Tip Top Club moved or Top Hat Club moved.
Yeah.
He wanted to be closer.
Look, this guy could be having a string of one night stands, and then he doesn't want them to know where he is. We don't know what's going on, but I feel like he's
surprised he doesn't have a room at the journalist club or the reporters club like Perry does.
I know. I should just stay there. I know.
Well, maybe he doesn't want Perry to see him flying in and out because Perry doesn't sleep.
Yeah, apparently not. But no, in the color era, Perry doesn't drink coffee, so he's probably sound asleep. Oh my goodness. The three knights apprehend Lois and Jimmy outside, but they decide not to run because they want the story, even though they know they could outrun the knights. All right, I'm of two minds about this. On the one hand, I actually appreciated this was a little bit of a variation. They're not just outright taken. Like, they recognize they could get away from these older gentlemen, but they want the story. So that I thought was refreshing. On the other hand, when have they ever proved themselves capable of getting the story and getting out? So it's like, why did you think this was going to be any different if you went along with them? So that's why I'm split on this.
From the other 90 episodes.
Yeah, exactly. At the castle, Jimmy can't find the cufflink or remember where he put it. They drop him into the dungeon through a trap door, but gallantly allow Lois to take the stairs down to the dungeon. Sir Arthur orders Sir Henry to volunteer to search Clark's apartment for the cufflink. And I guess what stood out to me here, and I welcome your thoughts, I feel like you start to see the tension or the divide that exists within this group between Sir Arthur and the other ones, right? Where there's this talk like, well, we can't drop her into the dungeon, right? Like, that wouldn't be gallant. That doesn't line up with what we do. And then again, the fact that this other guy is made to volunteer. So you're seeing here that they're not totally aligned. So I thought that was interesting.
I agree. And they made no secret of the fact that Sir Arthur was evil. I mean, the way the camera panned to him no confusion there, no ambiguity.
Yeah. Clark and Bill confer over how the jewel was never the target and why that makes Bill's job harder. I like that back. I always do like when it's the two of them and they're talking about the case, right? And yes. I think it's Bill one of them says like, oh, you got to wait till Halloween, till the armor is worn outside again, right?
You're right. And can I interject? I'm so sorry, but I'm still coming off the malaise of season 5, right? But just last Sunday, midday, I was channel surfing, and I watched a couple of minutes of the episode with Henderson's son, right? But Henderson came to Clark's office, and he goes, Clark, I just resigned from the force. I can't prosecute my son. I can't do it. And they start talking, and they're at the window, and Henderson goes, look, the kid just made a mistake. And Clark goes, yeah, but when somebody makes a mistake, that's when you really got to stand behind them. So some of the moral values that Clark/Superman articulated and epitomized was very clear in some of the other episodes, even though they didn't have physical action. I didn't see any of that in season 5, but I'm hoping there'll be more of a return to form, to use your words, in season 6.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Clark arrives home to find officers arresting Sir Henry as they had been tipped off. Clark declines to press charges and hears Henry's story. It turns out this is just a hobby for him and his fellow retirees, though they did put their fortunes into negotiable bonds to keep the club going. Clark strips him of his armor, tells him to act like a grown man, and sends him on his way. Let's see. As he's leaving, Henry throws in that Jimmy and Lois are being held captive.
What?
It's like, you think you might want to share that a little bit sooner? What did you make of this whole exchange between the two of them?
See, the sad thing is, Anthony, I probably saw this show when I was 6 or 7. So watching it again, I didn't dwell on it as to connect dots. It was just me watching a rerun for all practical purposes. It didn't stand out. I was more impressed this time by noticing yet another apartment for Clark. That stood out more.
Yeah.
One thing that we didn't touch on, but occurred earlier in this episode, was when Arthur is giving out the assignments. Even though there's supposed to be 12th century knights, they're quoting the Three Musketeers, which is like 400 years in the future, right? All for one and one for all. You guys are really commingling your history of people with swords.
Well, no one said they were good at this, in fairness. Yeah, I mean, that scene in the apartment was interesting because I feel like, yeah, you get a good sense. It's interesting because you have Clark patiently listening, like, and he's getting the details, but then he has that line about like, be a man, like act like a grown man and knock this off.
That surprised me. That was like, that was
quit
harsh. Being a child.
Yeah.
Quit living in a fantasy world.
But That might have made a little bit more sense if he had already known that Lois and Jimmy were missing. I could understand that harshness a little bit more. But at the same time, it's not like LARPing and cosplay were a thing then. So I could understand, like, from Clark's perspective,
the silliness.
Yeah, like, this is silly to him. So anyway, I enjoyed that scene overall. Clark dons the armor, mimics Henry's voice, and flies to the castle. So now we have this vocal mimicry.
Flying in the suit of armor.
He flies in the suit of armor. So in season 6, this is, and I believe it's just these two instances, the beginning and the end, interestingly. In this episode where you have him in the armor flying, and then in the series finale, All That Glitters, we have Lois and Jimmy flying when Jimmy dreams that they have powers. So like two exceedingly rare instances where it's not that typical Superman flying stock footage.
Yep. Yes.
Fat Moose Comics, established in 1982, is New Jersey's best and oldest comic book store. Moose has that rare old school comic shop feel and camaraderie, yet also remains a welcoming space for new fans. Visit them in Whippany or reach out via the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page. Ever wonder what would happen if a person who knew barely anything about comics decided to absorb hundreds of Superman stories? Robbo is that kind of person, and that's exactly what he's doing on a new show called This Podcast Will Never Die. Listen and subscribe today. Single Bound is a new podcast hosted by married couple Amy and Logan as they review single issues of comics. And if the title makes you think of Superman, you're not alone, as the Man of Steel is a regular topic of discussion. Listen and subscribe to Single Bound on Spotify and YouTube. At the castle, so Henry is quickly determined to be an imposter when he doesn't know where the dungeon is and is locked up himself. Arthur traps the other two as well, then calls Henry back to the castle and locks him up too. Arthur drops a poison gas pellet into the dungeon and starts to make off with the bonds. Finally, at long last, Superman frees himself and reveals his true identity.
Now, see, that puzzled me.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
no
figure
kidding.
out, why did he wait to reveal himself?
Lois explicitly says, "Why did you wait?" And he doesn't answer her. Now,
thank God, I thought.
in Michael Hayde's book, he has an excerpt from the original script. And in the original script, Superman has a line. I don't have it verbatim, but the gist of it was he wanted to see Arthur go all the way, or see how far Arthur would go to, I guess, have the evidence that he needs. Not a great explanation, but at least it's an explanation. Now, I don't know, and I think even Hayde writes in his book, like, it's unclear if, like, George just dropped the line, like he forgot the line, he didn't say it, or they made a change. I don't know. But at least in the original scripted version, there was an answer to that question, however unsatisfactory it might be. But watching this, it is baffling. It's like, why at this point, it is clear Arthur is the bad guy. Why would he wait?
I made the assumption that maybe Clark wasn't sure on the other two guys. Were they in cahoots with Arthur, or were they victims? I have no idea.
I know, but yeah.
That's why I figured that's the only way I could explain why Superman was chained to the wall with the helmet down. Now, one thing, a bit of trivia, a little factoid. Apparently, in 1949, George Reeves was the star of The Adventures of Sir Galahad, where he wore all this sort of armor. It was, I think, a Republic serial 15-part. So I found it interesting that he got to go back to medieval armor. I just found that that's a nice little trivia.
Yeah, no, that's cool. No, that's good. I appreciate you sharing that. No, I mean, as like, your point is well taken, and I think that helps us account for why he lets himself get locked up in the first place. But it becomes clear, I think, very quickly that the other two guys are also locked in there by Arthur, and he's already talked to Sir Henry. So it's like, he knows at this point that it's Arthur.
There's one bad guy.
Yeah. So, I mean,
and he only takes action when he drops that pellet, that poisonous ball down the pipe.
Yeah.
Releases the toxic fumes.
Yeah. That was a bit of a whiff. It also took him a couple of tries to get free. You notice that? All right.
Well, maybe he was hungover that day.
Oh, all right. Finally,
or maybe, you could make an argument if he was subject to maybe imbibing a little too much, and I'm sick of this stuff. I'm going to get tanked. Put a stuntman in there. Once the helmet's down, you don't know who's there.
Right. That's right. It's like Robert Downey Jr. says when he's talking about playing Iron Man. He's like, once that helmet comes down, I'm getting a massage. All right. At last, Superman nabs Arthur, and he bends the bar around him. That was cool. And Jimmy realizes he was wearing the cufflink the whole time.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Yep.
Boy, I can understand why you didn't make the anti-grav potion.
All right. So on a scale of 1 to 5, what are we giving this?
I'm torn between 1.5 and 2. I mean, it was pleasant enough. Was it the best of the series? Was it the best of season 6? No. I'm vacillating between 1.5 and 2. I gotta think that through.
All right. Well, you're thinking. I think I'm going to go. We gave Peril in Paris 2.5. The start of season 5. I'm going to
go 2.
I think this is easily a 2 for me. Is it more than that? I don't know. I don't know that it was really quite compelling enough. Yeah, it wasn't terribly compelling, but it was solid. Like overall, it mostly holds up, except for why Superman waited. Like that's a big hole.
That's a deficiency.
I'm gonna go 2 on this. I think this was a good start to the season.
And after some of the things we discussed in the prior weeks, this was a step up, in my estimation.
Yeah.
Was it as good as other stuff we've seen? Definitely not. But it was pleasant enough. And for a child, even my brother and I, we were excited to see the motif of the Knights, going back to Knights of the Round Table. I also know in the late 50s, there were other shows like Ivanhoe. And like I said, that like 8 or 9 years earlier, Reeves in The Adventures of Sir Galahad. So this was a big thing in movies and stuff. So I could see how they latched onto it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. You're going to be back next week for The Magic Secret. So I'm looking forward to that.
There's one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah. And this is the beginning of the end. When it comes to a rewatch podcast, and we've seen plenty over these past few years that have, finished covering the episodes that were the show that they're talking about and then continue in different ways. This podcast will not. Once we reach season 6, episode 13, that will be a wrap on this podcast. But of course, we talk about Superman every week over on Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey. So if you've really loved hearing me and my various guests, including Rich, talk about Superman, there's another place for that. But as far as another exciting episode in the Adventures of Superman, we got 12 left. So I hope you guys will continue to join us. And until then, as always, remember, only Superman can do super things. This podcast is an affiliate of BCW Supplies. The next time you need to restock on comic book bags, boards, boxes, and more, be sure to use promo code FSP to save 10% on your order. That's FSP for Flat Squirrel Productions. It helps support the show too. Thank you. Another way to support the show and receive exclusive content, including the spin-off podcast Beyond Metropolis, is by becoming a member at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. My sincere thanks to all patrons. Please subscribe, rate, and review today via your podcast platform of choice, and continue the conversation by joining us on social media. Flat Squirrel Podcasts is also home to Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey, a long-running weekly series mining Superman's vast mythology across time and media. Subscribe today. Another exciting episode is a Flat Squirrel production. Key art by Greg Schiegel and theme music by Dan Pritchard.